Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 119. Day 119 of TowerGate, July the 1st, 2017. It is Saturday. My. A lot going on. Nothing really major, but a lot of kind of second tier or minor things as we enter into the next 2 weeks where we expect we will be seeing Susan Rice. And we haven't had a date on Loretta Lynch, but we know that probably in the next 2 or so weeks we will hear from both of them, and that's probably going to be the most important thing going on with TowerGate in the next 2 weeks. Of course, these are for sure. Susan Rice is a closed session. I expect Loretta Lynch will also be a closed session, which means we won't really get to hear what they say, and there's a good reason for that. But whatever is learned from that will eventually, in the end, come out and be included in whatever decision is made in the congressional hearings as to how they want to proceed, whether they uncover things which they think were unethical or whatever but not illegal, or whether they actually find things they believe were illegal, in which case they would then move to the Department of Justice for criminal investigations. So we may have to wait to find out what the implications are from these testimonies, but we will eventually find out what was learned. And of course we could get leaks. You never know how that goes. But you know, the reason why I think the closed sessions, obviously Susan Rice and Loretta Lynch, are, you can't really force them to come and testify. And of course neither of them want to testify in an open hearing for obvious reasons, because they will be made to look bad. So if you're the head of one of these committees, Mr. Grassley or Trey Gowdy or whatever, you'll take what you can get, and if all you can get is a closed session, you'll take it. Because a lot of times in these closed sessions, what will happen is the person being questioned, whether it's Loretta Lynch or Susan Rice, they are simply not going to answer hardly any questions. They'll probably have attorneys with them, and they'll simply refuse to answer a lot of the questions that they are asked. And that's why they don't want to be in front of an open hearing, because they really don't want to be there to testify, but they have two choices: either don't testify and look guilty, or do testify, do it in a closed session, and simply don't answer any questions. So this is what they're going to try to do. But of course, there are, again, many people to be questioned, and you can eventually get down to the nitty-gritty and find out who did what. Because there, in the case of the surveillance and unmasking, there's not a whole lot of people who could have ordered it or had the authority to make it happen. And in the case of the obstruction with Loretta Lynch, James Comey has already stated under oath what happened, that she tried to get him to change the characterization of the investigation. And then, of course, he showed her an email between these high-level Democrat operatives saying that the fix was already in. He's already on record under oath as making these statements. Loretta Lynch is going to have to do one of two things: either agree that these things are true or call James Comey a liar. And this will be fairly contentious in how she handles that. And I assume she also, she is an attorney, she will have attorneys with her, and you can bet that they'll be doing their best to avoid answering as many questions as possible, and to give vague answers to as many questions as possible, the ones that they do choose to answer. So pretty much what happened with Hillary Clinton when she did her interview with the FBI. And of course, another thing, as we all remember, Hillary Clinton was never put under oath, and this is probably another thing that they will require, that they will not testify in a closed session. They will not take any oaths. So this is typically how criminals go about defending themselves. It's the best course of action they can take. It's the lesser of two evils, so to speak. So this is probably what's going to be driving TowerGate in the next couple weeks. There's many other things going on the periphery, and of course we follow those every day as well. It's just trying to stay on this track as much as possible, because there are so many different things. It seems like everybody in Washington is under investigation, and it is so many things going on that I don't want to lose the sharp focus of what's the driving issue behind the TowerGate videos, which is the unmasking, the surveillance, and the larger conspiracy to destroy the candidacy and then the presidency of Donald Trump using agencies of the government, which is bigger than Watergate, which is the whole point. But from time to time, there's not much news coming out about that, and so we move on to other topics that are somewhat related. But that's where my focus will be always whenever there is something there to comment on or to inform you of. That's where I'll be going. But I also want to say another thing too. I read all the comments in the comment sections and enjoy all those comments that you guys make. Especially enjoy watching the conversations that go on between a lot of you in the comment section with Mr. Chopa and Nanny Granny, old Nanny Granny, and Mora and Jarhead, and I can't remember everybody off the top of my head, but they're all there, and I enjoy reading all your comments and looking at the conversations that you're having among yourself based on topics on the video or other topics that are going on. Sometimes there are questions posed in those comments back and forth that you guys do to one another, of course, and keeping the list and all that stuff is really cool. So I've been watching that, looking at that. But sometimes there are questions that pop up, and I get ideas for my videos, so that when I do the video, if I see there's some questions in there, I try to go and dig a little bit into that and try to contribute to the discussion that's going on off on the sidelines between you all, in addition to what's happening in my video. So there was a comment there I wanted to look at because it kind of perked my ears up. I wasn't really sure. I think it was Mora who asked whether or not Mr. McCabe, Andrew McCabe, has actually been arrested or is going to be arrested for violating the Hatch Act. At this point, he has not been arrested for violating the Hatch Act. I checked this morning. He's not been arrested for that. He is under investigation for that, and that's a separate investigation. That's actually something that's happening within the Inspector General, and of course they work kind of with the Attorney General's office. So that's kind of a side thing going on. But of course we have the Congress, particularly the Senate, head of the Senate committee, Charles Grassley, is the one who really made news on McCabe this week when he sent the letter to Rosenstein suggesting that he should force Mr. McCabe to step down because he's the target of 3 investigations, including the most recent one is the one that Circa News was suggesting that this whole investigation of Flynn may have been a revenge measure by Mr. McCabe because of the sexual discrimination or harassment lawsuit that he was involved in with the FBI, which was not public knowledge at the time when the Flynn allegations came out. So that's another path that it's like you're going down this path and you start discovering things and it takes you off here and then you get taken off here and you get taken down here and over here. These things just, there's many off ramps as you're going down this main interstate. There's many off ramps, that places that you get taken as you're trying to follow the trail of the evidence, as these committees are trying to do that, as the Attorney General and other people are trying to do that. But at some point, I think they all meet at the same location. Whichever route you take to get there, there are many alternative routes and exit ramps that you take, but I think at the end of the day, they all end up at the same coffee shop or whorehouse, whichever you prefer. But this is basically what I think that we're looking at right here, so it does get kind of complicated and a little confusing with all the committees and all the various investigations going on. So at this time, Mr. McCabe has not been placed under arrest, but certainly I think the biggest thing that we're looking at here is probably Mr. McCabe, based on the letter to Mr. Rosenstein by Grassley, is an effort to force him out. And there's a site that I look at every now and then called Your News Wire. They do some pretty good journalism there, and they also put a lot of stories on their site that come from other sources. But they usually cite their sources pretty well, and they're usually fairly well mainstream sources, Truth Feed, and things like that. So anyway, I looked at them this morning, and basically they are suggesting from a source, not their source. This is a story that they posted on their site that was written by another journalist, but from another site. But they are suggesting that the pressure that Grassley is bringing on Rosenstein will lead to McCabe being forced to step down, either A, step down as Assistant Attorney General, which is a 50-50 shot that may happen maybe in the next couple weeks, but they're suggesting that by the end of this upcoming week that McCabe will be asked to recuse himself from any more involvement in the hearings that are going on regarding the obstruction, the surveillance, or anything else because of his conflicts that he has. And I think that that's very likely. I think that we could see Mr. McCabe recuse himself, pretty much do what Jeff Sessions did. I mean, if Jeff Sessions had to recuse himself because he inadvertently had a conversation with a Russian ambassador, which was part of his job, then it's not. It's certainly acceptable to have Mr. McCabe step down because he's in the process of being the target of 3 investigations, including one of them investigations being directly related to the very issues that he's dealing with, and especially since Circa News did this story suggesting that that this attack on Flynn may have been revenge by McCabe because of his being a target in this sexual discrimination suit. So yeah, I think that there's some stuff going on. McCabe has not been arrested for the violations of the Hatch Act or anything else as far as I know, but I think that we can expect to see him at the very least recuse himself in the next 5 to 10 days. I think the pressure will eventually force him to recuse himself, and essentially it might even cause him to resign. I imagine he could be fired certainly by Trump. He can be. There's no question about that. Whether or not Trump will do that, I don't know. I think Trump still wants to sit on the sidelines a bit and let the process work and see if it will work. And that's what we're all watching to see. Depends on how much pressure is applied and where that pressure is applied and what the consequences may be for those who may be targets and whether or not these hearings result in criminal charges. It's when the criminal charges are filed or when people fear that criminal charges will be filed, that's when you really start seeing things break up. That's when you start seeing people seeking immunity. That's when you start seeing people singing like a bird. And that's when you start seeing people take extraordinary measures to protect themselves. And that's likely when things get blown completely wide open. But we are definitely seeing the type of things that you see in the lead up to these types of events. Going back to Watergate, the same was true. You had a lot of just little bitty things that were erupting but were managed along the way until Woodward and Bernstein finally discovered the secret slush fund and discovered the names of the 5 men who controlled the fund and were able to tie that to the money that was directly paid to the burglars. And then, of course, once they found that Nixon had a taping system and they heard the conversations between him and various other people in his administration, the FBI, the CIA, and everyone else, it became obvious that there was a cover-up and that the Nixon and his higher-ups were all involved in the cover-up. And that's what brought down Nixon and his people. And this is the same type of thing that I see developing here. Remember, it took 2.5 years for Watergate to unravel. We're less than a year into this, but I do believe that we are going to see things unravel because there's just too much there. And we have a president who's pursuing it. So anyway, that's my thoughts on Mr. McCabe and where things will probably end up going with him. I see him recusing himself for sure in the next week to 2 weeks, and whether or not he steps down, I don't know. Certainly that could happen. We'll just have to wait and see. Eric Holder, there was a mention by, I think, Maura again on the this Eric Holder situation. Well, Eric Holder, yeah, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, he kind of popped up, kind of resurfaced, and suggested that he is going to start laying some groundwork to get involved back into election politics. Now, he was appointed as Attorney General. He didn't run for any election or anything like that. He's primarily been a bureaucrat. He's never really been an elected official, but it looks like he may be thinking about going that direction. This cryptic message, I think, is what Morrow may have referring to. He sent out a tweet which he said basically sending a message which people are calling a cryptic message to the career men and women of the DOJ and the FBI that the actions and their actions and integrity will be challenged. And he's suggesting that they should stay strong, stay tough, and stay in the fight. And of course, a lot of people suggesting that Mr. Holder has presidential aspirations. Well, Mr. Holder's presidential aspirations will go nowhere. Remember, Mr. Holder was deeply involved in the gun running and involved in the Fast and Furious operation. President Obama had to use presidential authority to block that investigation. The Congress officially declared Eric Holder as being obstructing justice. He has a lot of skeletons in his closet. He's connected to a lot of dirty people and a lot of dirty money. He is not a very good politician. He's not a very good campaigner. He's a kind of a low-energy, boring, kind of milquetoast guy. Eric Holder's aspirations for elected office, especially at the presidential level, will go nowhere. The only thing Mr. Holder can do is refire and bring back to the forefront a lot of things that he was involved in that could put him in legal jeopardy and could cause him a lot of issues, which he probably doesn't want because he's right now making a lot of money as a lobbyist. So my advice to Mr. Holder: keep your mouth shut, continue making that big money, doing what you do, sticking your neck out there in election politics, especially at the national level, will go nowhere. It's suicide. It will only bring bad things upon you. You'd be best to keep doing what you're doing, Mr. Holder. You have no career in election politics, especially at the national level. You'd be better off just to keep your mouth shut and go away. It's hard to speculate on what's going to happen in 2020, but I can tell you Eric Holder will not be the torch bearer for the Democrats in 2020. I actually don't believe the Democrats are going to be in any position to do anything in 2020 except for receive the final nail in their coffin, which is what I think 2020 will be. This party has a lot of problems, and they will not be straightened out. They will not be straightened out before 2020, and I think that they're going to have to hit rock bottom. They're pretty close to that now, but I think doing poorly in 2018 and then finally losing again to Trump in 2020 will be the point at which the ultimate low point, and only then will they really have to go through change. They're like an alcoholic or a drug addict or a gambling addict or someone like that. They only change when they hit rock bottom. As long as they can continue to do what they're doing, no matter how much suffering and misery they bring upon themselves and others, they simply will not change. Change only comes, in most cases, when you hit rock bottom. The Democrats have not hit rock bottom yet, clearly. Well, I think they have, but they haven't accepted that yet. And I think that it will take a weak showing in 2018 and finally another devastating loss to Trump in 2020 before they actually hit rock bottom. And if you're looking at the contenders, if you look at the Democratic Party, there really is no national Democrats, out there. The only two that I can think of is, of course, Hillary Clinton, and I have every reason to believe that she's setting the stage for a 2020 run, but I just simply think that she will be embarrassed in doing so. I don't think she would even win the primary. There's just too many progressives that don't like her. The party is sick of her, and the big donors gambled $1.2 billion on her and lost in the previous election. I don't think they're going to be stupid enough to do that again. So I do believe that she is going to try to make that happen, but I just think either she will be so strongly discouraged by the corporate Democratic Party not to do it, or if they have no one else, they may have no choice. And the Clintons still wield considerable political power, at least as we're speaking today. There are events and things that could happen in the next 2.5 years that could change that, but for now, she is still probably the only national politician the Democrats have, and she's a loser for 2020 regardless. I mean, if the economy is growing at 3.5%, 4%, people perceive the economy is doing pretty well, and Trump hasn't gotten us into any major foreign policy quagmire, he'll be reelected. Simple as that. I think if you are looking to speculate, and that's what I'm doing here, speculating, I think that the person to watch on the Democrat side who will not succeed. But the person to watch is Michael Bloomberg. Because I think that there's a lot of Democrats, the money people, which is the most important people in the equation, the money people are looking at this and saying, look, Trump came out of nowhere as a populist, defeated all those establishment people. We are really in that type of environment. We need a kind of a populist guy on the left to come and do what Trump did on the right. And we also maybe a successful businessman, someone with a lot of money, which is what you're going to need, because the Democrats are seriously having issues with raising money, and I think that that's going to be an issue for them. So I think the man to look at is Michael Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg is extremely wealthy, like Trump. He's a billionaire. He is political. He was the mayor of New York, and he's as a liberal, progressive, whatever. He's a fairly straight shooter, and I think that with his money and his name recognition and his national identity, I think he probably can beat any of the other Democrats like Elizabeth Warren or any of those type of people. I think that he could also be the guy who could scare Hillary Clinton away, or certainly he could draw the support that the people she would need. I think he can draw them people away from her and bring them into his camp. The only problem that Mr. Bloomberg has is that he is an unapologetic liberal, a very, very far left liberal. And if he were running in a popular vote, he might win. But he cannot win the electoral college in a national election, presidential election, because he is far too the left. And Mr. Bloomberg, of course, will be probably told, hey, if you move to the center, you could win. But again, Michael Bloomberg, he's just not that type of person. He is a lot like a Trump. He's not going to change his position necessarily to fit anyone else. Michael Bloomberg is the type of person who, if he's told, hey, we think you need to move to the center and we think you could win, I think he'll look at that person and say, well, you know what? I think what I need to do is go out and make the case and try to bring people in, try to change their minds, try to persuade them as to my point of view, rather than back down and change my point of view. So I think this is the type of person Bloomberg is. I don't think he's a person who will compromise very much. I think he believes in his philosophy, and I think he believes that he would like a chance to go out and persuade people to accept and buy into his philosophy rather than change his philosophy. And I think that that's pretty much how I see Michael Bloomberg. I don't see him... Plus, it would be very difficult for him to move to the center because he served as the New York's mayor and had a very progressive agenda. And as soon as he tries to distance himself from any of those positions, he would be called out on it. And I think it would hurt his credibility. I think he understands that. So, it's too early to tell because we're just not close enough to 2020. But we'll have to see what the state of the economy is, where Trump's approval ratings are, what the situation is in the foreign policy issues, where we are. You can never tell where that's going to go from one day to the next. And there's still a lot of neocons, unfortunately, in Trump's administration, and they could get him into some trouble. And that always has to be watched for. And we'll just have to see what's going to happen. But I don't think that Eric Holder has any prayer whatsoever of anything other than reigniting old issues from the past that probably will not serve him well. I think he would be best advised to stay exactly where he is. Let's see, the next issue. Yes, there is a group which has over 1 million members called the Association of Mature American Citizens. They have now filed an official complaint with the FCC over the CNN knowingly reporting fake news. Now, I touched on this earlier in a video. It is the FCC that grants licenses. There are various types of licenses that you can be granted. You can have an entertainment license, you can have a news license, and I believe that CNN carries a news license. I do believe that the FCC chairman should take a very close look and possibly have some modifications to more clearly define what is news and what is entertainment. And I do believe it's a very good case that this organization is going to make to the FCC, as we now know that CNN is now admitting that they do fake news. So I think it's a very a good measure. I think that we could see a lot more piggybacking of this type of thing going on as more and more pressure is applied to the liberal media, to all media for that matter, and on the old media, meaning the newsprint media, the cable, and the network news. I do believe that a lot more pressure is going to be applied to them as we move forward, and I do believe that this filing of this complaint with the FCC may have some traction. CNN is in meltdown mode, as is MSNBC, the New York Times, and all the rest, and this is driving them to do things that are quite honestly only hurting them even more. They don't seem to understand this, but I think it's all they know how to do. You know, it's the only way they know how to respond. But an official complaint has been filed with the FCC on CNN for knowingly reporting fake news. It would be very, I don't know what the word is, but we'll just have to wait and see what the FCC does. They haven't really asserted themselves very much into any of this, but I think it's time that the FCC needs to act. And I think that they really do need to take a look at what differentiates entertainment from news. They need to be more specific in defining that, and they need to be more responsible in their granting of licenses for news organizations to hold them to being news organizations as opposed to posing as news organizations when actually being fake news or entertainment or party propaganda or any of this. So I would like to see big reforms come out of the FCC, and I would like to see better definitions and more careful licensing of these news organizations, or so-called news organizations, CNN being at the very top of the list. Susan Rice, the House Intelligence Committee, of course, as we talked about earlier, will be having her in for a closed session. And a couple things that we want to really focus on here, and I think what they are focused on there in those hearings. Remember, this is not so much about the Russia thing with Susan Rice. This is really about the unmasking and other things regarding the surveillance issue, especially because she was a national security advisor, and it's going to be she's going to have to answer the question, what were you doing getting involved in unmasking? You're the national security advisor. That's a political position. You're advising the president on foreign policy issues. Why are you getting involved in the unmasking of people around a presidential candidate in a presidential election campaign? That's a question that I'm sure that Susan Rice is going to have to try to answer or spin out of. And it's definitely a question I'm sure is at the very top of the list for the House Intel Committee. She has, of course, admitted to the unmasking, but she has never admitted to any leaking, nor, as far as I know, has she ever been specifically directly asked about whether she ever leaked anything. I can assure you she will be asked if she ever leaked anything to anyone, whether it be other government officials, members of Congress, members of the media, her best friend, her yoga instructor, her cook, or her dietitian, her plastic surgeon, or anyone else. They are going to want to know if she ever leaked any of this information that she had as a result of the unmasking to anyone. This is a question she probably does not want to answer because it's a yes-no question. You can't dance around that one too much, and I believe that the truth is known, that the answer to that question is probably yes. She may have to lie about it. But if you remember when we were talking about Susan Rice initially, a couple months ago, being asked to testify, her position was that she didn't want to testify, and then when it became obvious that she would probably be not forced, but would be highly advised to do so, otherwise she might find herself under criminal indictment, we then began to hear about back channel communications with her attorney, possibly seeking immunity. So we haven't really heard much since they've announced that she is going to be testifying. We haven't heard much about this immunity, but I think that that's still in the cards for Susan Rice, and I believe that that may come up in these closed-door sessions. If she finds herself getting into a difficult situation, that is something that may come up in the discussion either prior to or after those hearings, or maybe during that closed session. It may be a topic that is broached if it appears at some point between Susan Rice and her attorney that things have not gone well, and that she may be sensing that something of a criminal nature is coming her way, some of that type of discussion about immunity may come up. And I believe Susan Rice will throw someone under the bus. Again, I think that James Comey is probably the target. And we saw how he tried to defend himself, send a strong message that if you try to make me the scapegoat, I've got dirt on you. But I believe that ultimately it's very likely that this could come down to a finger-pointing contest between James Comey and Loretta Lynch, and James Comey and Susan Rice. It could be a sort of us versus them sort of thing. I think that they will try to defend Obama as much as possible, and of course they'll try to defend themselves. But they have to find somebody to take responsibility for these illegal activities that we all know occurred. And so I think that that is going to be probably the thing to watch the closest on that, is who is ultimately going to be made out to be the scapegoat, and how will they respond. That's when things really start to get cooking, is when you actually have a finger pointed at someone and there's real criminal liability waiting on the other end of that. And that's when you generally see things happen. So we'll also expect that Susan Rice will, it's obviously Susan Rice didn't just wake up one morning and decide that she should seek this unmasking of surveillance. She was obviously ordered to do so. Someone told her to do it. This is another question that she will be asked, a question that Intelligence Committee will want to get to the bottom of. It's another question that she's going to have a very difficult time dancing around. She worked for Obama directly. She's going to want to cover for Obama. So who is Susan Rice going to point to say that they ordered her to do this? Or is she going to take it upon herself and say, well, I just decided it would be a good idea? Then she has to explain why, as a national security advisor, she would even have been involved. So she's in a very difficult position. So is Loretta Lynch. It's going to be quite fun to watch, to see how these two try to spin their way out of this. I don't think that they can. And I think that's why they wanted closed sessions, because they understand this is going to be very damaging to them. And I think that more than likely what they want to learn, or their attorneys want to learn, they're not going there because either Lynch or Rice want to cooperate. They're going there to find out what the intentions are of the people who are looking at them. Are they just wanting some political theater, or are they really going to pursue some criminal charges? I think that that's what the attorneys for both of these women want to know, so that they know how to play their next card. So this is all that's happening now, is posturing. This is all posturing so that people can position themselves correctly to limit the damage that will be done to them. And, of course, they'll want to protect Obama. Now, brings us to our next point. Trey Gowdy was recently, I'm not sure what day, I just watched a video a few minutes ago before I started doing this video, but he was talking about the fact that they sent this letter to Grassley's committee, sent this letter to Loretta Lynch about a week or so ago, and that it required that she reply to them by July the 6th. Well, my friends, July the 6th is coming up here very, very soon. I believe that will be Wednesday of this coming week. And there was a lot of questions there. I seriously doubt if she is going to actually reply within the time frame that they gave her. I think she's going to try to drag this out. But just from the questions, and we don't know all the questions, but we did see some of them, and those are some very, very tough questions for Loretta Lynch to answer, because just about any way that she answers them, based on how the questions were worded, implicates somebody. There are questions that implicate you. There are also questions that the committee already knows the answers to, for which she has only one choice. Either A, confirm, which is confirming, at the very least, unethical activity and possibly criminal activity that she is guilty of, or B, lie, which of course they can probably prove. She's in a very tough situation, and I imagine that that letter will not be showing up anytime around the 6th. They're probably going to have to work much harder to get that. I assume it will eventually will show up, and we'll find out how she has answered to that letter, because the answers to that letter will probably be made public. So we will learn more about that. But Trey Gowdy mentioned something, just the way he said it. He said, kind of talking about Rice and Lynch and suggesting that, yeah, Grassley sent this letter to Lynch, but he said, we are, on the House side, on the Oversight Committee that I chair, I am also, Lynch and Rice are also on my list. And I expect we will be having them in front of my committee as well. And then he kind of mentioned sort of offhandedly that it was convenient that as Susan Rice is coming in to testify and that Lynch is in the process of putting together her responses to this letter, he suggested it's kind of strange that Obama would have suddenly taken a trip to Jakarta, Indonesia, where of course he lived from the age of 6 to the age of 10, and which does not have an extradition treaty with the United States. Don't know if he's going to plan on moving back to Indonesia or what have you, but it's just funny that in that conversation he was having about the fact that his committee would be having Rice and Lynch in to testify as well, that he would bring up the fact that as these two women are being called to testify or answer the letter or what have you, that he would just out of the blue say, yeah, and it's kind of strange that Obama has just gone to Indonesia. So that's very interesting. I think it's pretty clear that just based on the interview that I watched, I got the impression that Trey Gowdy is not necessarily gunning for Lynch and Rice himself. It appeared to me that he's gunning for Obama, and that he wants Rice and Lynch to be the two people who he pressures to give him Obama. My thoughts on that are that, boy, it's really, really tough to get a former president. I mean, that's just tough to do. I can assure you that Obama will never, ever appear in front of any congressional committee, and even if he were charged with a crime and had to go sit in a courtroom, I don't believe he would testify. I just don't believe you'll ever hear Obama ever testify in front of any committee or even in a court hearing, if it ever went that far, which I doubt that it will, because you would have to have people give him up, and I just don't think there's anyone going to give up Obama. I think that even Lynch and Rice would fall on the sword before they give up Obama. That's just my thoughts. I think they'll try to pin it on someone else, but I just don't. I just think that's the odds of that happening are so low that it's just weird that he brought it up, but it clearly shows you who Trey Gowdy's target is. It's Obama. Another thing too, I occasionally see in comments that, yeah, they'll bring Hillary or Bill Clinton in to testify about his meeting with Loretta Lynch on the tarmac. Yeah, Loretta Lynch is going to be answering a lot more questions about the tarmac. There's still people out there floating the accusation that there are tape or some recording of that conversation of Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton on the plane. There may be, but I would think by now, if that existed, they already would have been subpoenaed, or someone would have gotten it or gotten leaks from it or something. So I'm not really sure where to go with that. It'd be great to see it. But as far as Bill Clinton, Bill Clinton will not be testifying in front of any committees, just like Obama, former president. He will not testify in front of any committee, or if criminal charges were brought against him, although what he did wasn't really criminal. It's what Loretta Lynch did. You could say that what he did was criminal, but you would have to have a criminal conviction of Loretta Lynch before Bill Clinton could be drug into it in a criminal manner. But no, Bill Clinton's not going to testify in front of any committees, nor will Hillary. You will never see Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, or Barack Obama ever testify in front of any committees in Congress. I can assure you that. That is absolutely not going to happen. What they will do is they will, of course, use people who they pay to go out and be their spokesman and to go out and do respond for them in the media, directly to friendly media sources. They will not respond whatsoever, nor will they ever appear in front of any committees. We've seen the end of any Clintons or Obamas testifying in front of committees. I wouldn't, and even see them being charged with a crime and a criminal proceeding. They'd be in a courtroom, but even then they would not testify. We will never hear directly from Clinton, either of the Clintons or Obama again, probably, as far as in a direct conversation, question or an answer or anything like that. Committees, none of that. None of that will happen. They will use surrogates, professional people, to speak for them, and we will not see these people back in front of any hearings or Congress or testifying or anything like that. That's not going to happen. Never. No way. Roger Stone is going to testify, and of course Roger Stone has been dying to testify, as has Mr. Manafort, and they both want to do open hearings. They want the whole world to see them testify. They both feel like they were attacked, viciously attacked, and they both believe they're 100% innocent, have done nothing. Particularly, I think Roger Stone wants to clear up the issue, the accusations that he had anything to do with the emails going to WikiLeaks, or having information about that, or being involved with Julian Assange, or even knowing Julian Assange, or anything like that. I think Stone just wants to clear his name more than anything else, and Manafort probably the same. I expect that those will be open hearings because that's what they would like, and I think the Republicans on the committee would like to have them do open hearings. They're both pretty smart guys. They're both been around politics a very, very long time. They know how to play the game, and I expect that those will be some fairly entertaining hearings with Mr. Stone. So we'll have to see how that goes, but I expect that sometime in July we will be seeing Stone and Manafort, certainly Stone, testify, and those will be, certainly expect will be open sessions, and I can assure you Mr. Stone's hearing will be quite entertaining. Okay, Mika Brzezinski, she is now responding. She did not have a facelift, only some chin work. Oh my God! Oh, what a mess! No facelift, only some chin work. She needs a lobotomy. That woman is dumber than dirt, man. You know, it's just hard to believe. These are some really, really dumb people, and they're on TV, man. And no one should take a thing that Mika Brzezinski says, or Scarborough, or any of these people. These people are just, they're mutts, man. They really are. Watching a little bit of a Fox Hannity hour-long recap video, and kind of interesting, where Gingrich suggested that Bill Clinton should testify about his meeting with Loretta Lynch on the tarmac, and of course I'm really surprised Gingrich would make that assertion. Now, I understand why he make the assertion, certainly be something that Clinton probably should do, but he would lie, okay? He's not going to tell you what he talked to Loretta Lynch about on the tarmac. We all know what he talked about on the tarmac. It was Hillary Clinton's email investigation. Had nothing to do, not a single word about grandchildren yoga or anything else, or Brexit or anything else. That entire time was probably Bill Clinton probably reminding Loretta Lynch that she is where she is today because of him, and he probably reminded her of various dirt that he has on her, because that's how the Clintons operate. He probably gave her a list of names of some people within the Department of Justice who could be compromised because of certain things about them. This is how the Clintons play. I mean, these people are a mafia. They think about how a mafia don will play it. That's how the Clintons play it. So you can be assured that Loretta Lynch was threatened, bribed, extorted, pressured, and everything else by Bill Clinton on that plane. That's what those conversations were about. Had absolutely nothing to do with anything else, and we all know it. Bill Clinton's not going to go up and testify to that. And as far as Gingrich is concerned, I think he was just making that assertion. He can't seriously believe that Bill Clinton is going to be testifying, even if he did, which he won't. He certainly would not tell the truth. And so, you know, what it looks like to me at this stage of the game, and of course the dynamics could change, but at this point, if I had to analyze where this thing might end up in the coming weeks, not where the end game is, but where we might be in, you know, 4 to 6 weeks, maybe as much as 3 months down the road, looking at the next 90 days, the place where I think that we are going to be at, I think, is we are going to be seeing at this particular juncture, who is going to be singled out as the scapegoat or scapegoats. And I do believe that both, of course, Comey and Lynch, Lynch and Rice are part of the same, you know, component group. And they're speaking to the same people all involved, and they're going to be kind of working together, I guess you would say, a kind of a tag team effort. And I do believe that the only real person that they really can use as a scapegoat, who's really put himself out there, and a person who would be in position at a high enough level that could even be the scapegoat, would be Comey. So, you know, I've been feeling this for quite some time, and so I think that ultimately where we're going to be in the several weeks to maybe a couple months down the road is it's going to be Lynch and Rice and anyone else who testifies. I think there's going to be a coordinated effort that's going to be launched against James Comey to make him the scapegoat. Put it all on Comey and make it a sort of Comey versus Lynch and Comey versus Rice, and have them tag team him. He's lost a lot of credibility, and we know that he recently went to the New York Times with his wife one evening, and so he obviously knows and has figured out what I figured out, that he is being set up by these other criminals to be the scapegoat. He is going to be the guy that they're going to try to make this about James Comey to get it off their back. I don't think it's going to work. Comey will fight back, and he does have probably a lot of dirt on them and other things he can reveal. I don't think he told us everything. I think he's keeping some things to himself, and maybe that's why he went to the New York Times, maybe to do a story with them where he leaks that to them and says, hey, you know, so that the story, when it comes out, the New York Times can say, you know, we get the impression that James Comey knows a little more than what he said, that there are other things that he didn't disclose regarding surveillance, wiretapping, the obstruction of justice with Loretta Lynch, the email thing, the Clinton Foundation. I think that James Comey is going to, I think what he's doing and what he did by going to the New York Times, again, I think he realizes he is going to be made out to be the scapegoat. He believes they're going to gang up on him, and I think that what he's doing is laying the groundwork to try to put things out there in the press that would give these people pause, at least ways make them and their attorneys have to sit back and say, uh-oh, how far will Comey go? What has he got? What's he willing to say? Will he incriminate himself on a lesser charge? Will he go for immunity? It's very possible. We could see James Comey seek immunity to spill his guts. He could end up being the, just like Richard Nixon's lawyer, Mr. Dean, the rat. It could turn out that Mr. Comey could turn out to be the songbird. He could be the one, once he feels the pressure being brought on him, realizing he is going to be the scapegoat. We could see James Comey suddenly get hit with the honesty stick and start really talking. He knows a lot more than he said that he's letting on. He gave us a few glimpses into that. That was a message. That's exactly what that was. And I think he's going to send further messages. And I think that ultimately what we are looking at here is a showdown. Remember, the Clintons and the Obamas will be protected. They are very powerful people. You do not want to cross them or dump on them. Very bad things can happen to you, and a lot of these people realize that's a place you don't want to go. So they'll have to find someone else. And I do believe they're going to tag team Comey. I believe he is going to be made out to be the scapegoat, and once he finally realizes that it's all being dropped on him, he could be the one that becomes the songbird, that seeks immunity and allows this thing to be busted wide open. And at the end of the day, as much as a lot of us hold him in contempt and do not like Comey and do not like a lot of the things he did, I think ultimately at the end, Mr. Comey could be positioning himself to be the hero of the right and could end up being Donald Trump's, not that that's what he wants, but he could end up being Donald Trump's, not necessarily a savior, but he could be the person who drops all the bombs that end up blowing up the opposition and taking them out. If it comes down to them or him, Mr. Comey, as we've seen, looks after James Comey first. How he deals with the fallout of all that will be interesting to see. I mean, we saw with Mr. Dean what he did. He just came out and switched sides. That's exactly what he did. He came out and wrote tell-all books, took advantage of every opportunity he could to make some money off of being a songbird, and then he switched over and went to the other party and became a hero of the other party for taking down Nixon. We could very well see James Comey do the very same thing. He could become the songbird, he could seek immunity, he could drop the dime on all these people. He's probably got the information. He could then clear himself and become a hero of the right instead of right now being the lapdog of the right. And the whole dynamic of this thing could change. So this is what it looks like to me at this point. This could all change as more things happen. It's very unpredictable, and it's a situation that's constantly in a state of flux. There's just no way to know where this is all going to end up. But there's just too much there, too much criminal activity with the obstruction, the surveillance, and all these other things. The dossier, just too much going on for me to believe that that no one is going to be facing some criminal liability unless the Congress and the Department of Justice and the FBI just simply rolls over and just decides that they do not want to do any of this. Maybe they don't want the political consequences, whatever. They don't want to have to do it. They don't have the stomach for it, whatever. Maybe they just want to take advantage of some political opportunities for the elections coming up. Maybe that's all this will be, is a dog and pony show for politics, and they simply won't have the stomach to actually do their job and enforce the law and bring forth charges on the people who've committed the crimes. This is something that we'll have to wait and see. No one knows the answers to these questions, not me or anyone else. So we'll keep following it, though. I appreciate you tuning in today. TowerGate, day 119, Saturday, July the 1st, 2017. We'll be back tomorrow on Sunday evening, and I'm going to be, unless some major events break in the next 24 hours, the focus of that video is really going to be on the media and where I see things going with them. Been doing some work on that, so we'll talk about that tomorrow. Appreciate you tuning in. You all enjoy your evening. It is movie night. Have no idea what we're going to watch, but I'm sure we'll find a couple of movies and have some pizza and enjoy our Saturday night. I hope you guys all do as well. See you back here tomorrow. Bye.